Afternoon. I don't want to stand in the way of you and what appears to be a very popular teacher, quite rightly so. I just want to let you know something about the new lights and all that we have. I just want to let you know what's happening. We have actually a collaboration with the UGC and which is in turn collaborating with IIT Chennai to create a national platform for e-learning of social sciences. And they're trying to experiment with learning from our foundation courses in teaching social sciences in engineering institutes. And so from that perspective, they're trying to record some of our lectures, foundation course lectures, and appropriately subtitle it and try to take it to IITs and so on to see whether it's a platform of learning in social sciences that might work. I am aware that they've joined us late, but they're going to be here for the whole program till September. Camera team is going to stay with us. Let me introduce to you Mr. Krishnamurthy, who is in charge of it in IIT Chennai. I'll request him to take about 20 seconds to just tell you what this is about. I'm talking like Arnab Goswami, sorry.
Actually, it doesn't require about beyond 20 seconds. My name is Kannan Krishnamurthy, and I have two people here around. I have Soju Francis and Selvam, the cameraman. And we are recording these lectures for NPTEL, which is an elaborated national program on technology enhanced learning. You can go to the website and see. There, I have uploaded about 8,000 hours of video lecture there for everyone to access free. They can learn free. No need to register or no need to become a member of it, but you can still learn the courses. And we are also planning to offer certified courses online also. So this is in fact one of the experiments which we want to try, taking out our studio equipment outside our environs and bring out to the institutes where we can record the best of the lectures that you like. Okay, thank you very much. And if we are causing you any hindrance by lights, by microphones or anything, by people moving around, please be kind to tell any one of us and we will try to sort it out. And secondly, please switch off all your mobile phones. Don't put them on the vibration mode, please, because that may interfere my audio recording. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnamurthy. We hope students can put up with the slight problems that might come up as a result with these two lights on. Eye contact is going to be a problem, I'm aware of it. We are trying to rework the location of the lights in order to make it much less cumbersome for our eyes, the teachers and students. We'll do that by today evening, and probably we'll have a better lighting system by tomorrow. Without wasting time, it's over to Raman.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the generosity of clapping and for any dancer that helps. And I said in the previous lecture, talking about caste is a challenging subject because we all love our caste, and so casting out caste is very difficult. And we do not know whether we really want to cast out caste or we want to hold on to it, and that's a big challenge. I believe the amount of clapping I received after the first lecture, it seems that you all want to look at caste very critically. That itself is a big success. I think that shows this group of students sitting here is for change and for good. So thank you, first of all. You know, there are many illnesses that we suffer from in the society. You dengue and so many things. But this is an illness we inherit. That is why I call ascript status. So it's also ascript disease. How do we deal with this disease? Those who consider it as a disease would definitely like to deal with it in a different way. Those who consider it as a pride would like to deal with it in a different manner. So it is is a disease that affects different people in different ways. Those are to benefit, obviously would treat it differently. Those are the victims of it, obviously would treat it differently. But if our overall aim is fraternity, one nation, a powerful nation, we the people, that's what the resolve commitment we have taken in the name of preamble. So if that has to be realized, obviously caste has to be critically looked at almost every Indian in this country. So obviously you have a first responsibility looking at caste very critically. Why? Because we have already discussed, just to begin with, at least a few reasons, very clear-cut reasons we have before us. First of all, it divides us. Though we claim to be Indians, but caste does not allow that to claim that we as an Indian. It renders, it pushes rather as people of different social status, some inferior, some superior, some in between. So it divides, and that is why in one of the occasions Ambedkar argued, how can thousands of people divided of thousands of castes can constitute a nation? People divided of thousands of castes can never become a nation. So obviously then you need to address that question. So it divides us on social realm, it divides us also on economic realm, it also divides us politically. More interestingly, it also divides us psychologically. All other social institutions, maybe the first three categories may be applicable. The fourth one, so psychological, is the biggest plot. That by birth somebody is declared as inferior, and by birth somebody is declared as superior. And both are illiterate. When you are born, obviously you are a child. Whether a Brahmin child or a Dalit child, you are a child. Absolutely. And when you become very old, powerless completely, again you become a child. There is no caste barrier there, because everybody has to depend on the parents, the mother especially. But it declares that somebody is inferior, and that inferiority continues till death. A disease that is a child is born with dies with that disease. So obviously this is a disease which is much more serious in nature. Dengue can be treated, malaria can be treated, leprosy can be treated, even AIDS can be treated, but this is a bigger enemy. Cancer can be treated, caste cannot be treated. Why? Because that pride of being a member of a one caste, the shameness of being a member of a particular caste lingers throughout your life. So definitely it is a bigger disease, and we need to address more seriously. And if we don't address it, it is a threat perpetually, and it became a major challenge to the country as a whole. And when we are as a divided nation, so obviously it is easy for everyone to laugh at us and bulldoze us. So in the last lecture we talked about what caste is all about, and what are its implications. In fact, I said in the last lecture that caste system is nothing but a reservation policy supported by tradition and religion. We also have a reservation policy under the Constitution, supported by various sections of the provisions of the Indian constitutions. So the tradition-based reservation, it is a divisive. It's a very divisive reservation policy, which through the Constitution we are trying to blur it to bring some kind of a parity. Any kind of a competition can be possible only among equals. Unequals cannot compete. The playing field should be brought to a level where you can compete. And that is what the question of reservation policy has come into being. I know it is a much contested, controversial issue. I think that alone need one day to discuss, because I know you as young students sitting here, I know how you managed to reach this place, and it has implications. We will discuss it later. Coming to the today's sessions more closely, we are supposed to talk about caste movements. That is the mandate given to me. Now, caste movements could be movements to continue with the caste, as I said in the beginning, movement to discontinue with the caste. You have two major ways of classifying caste movements. Those who want to continue with the caste movements may adopt different strategies. Those who want to discontinue with the caste system may have different strategies. If you are caught in a room, and it's closed, there are wild animals and snakes around you, what will you do? What will you do? You will try to escape whatever means possible. And if there is no possibility of escaping, what will happen? Yeah? Fight back. Even a small cat, it will keep running all around, trying to find some gap to escape. If there is nothing, in order to escape from that fear, it may bounce on your throat. If you want to try out, you can try out. I tried out with a dog in my house. I end up cleaning its shit. A different way you cope the crisis. Caste system is like that. A huge population is caught up in a closed room and there is no way to escape. And when it finds there is no way to escape, what is the consequences? How it managed to escape? The strategy could be various. It can be something very dangerous, something very interesting. Traditionally, the people caught up in the caste system were not as courageous as the cat and mouse or the dogs. They were only adopting various forms of not bouncing on him, still trying to find out. And most of them are on the side of pleading for mercy. Please leave me, give me space to escape. That has been, if you look at historically, there are a number of movements of those kinds. There were also very powerful movements led by these communities. So movements seeking justice within the caste structure. So you will find a vast number of people trying to escape this within the caste structure. I said, yeah, I am Dalit, but I am a nice Dalit. Please don't kill me. Don't rape me. I am a nice person. I will do whatever you want. So I am within these structures. I am not revolting against the structure. I want to be within, but treat me better. That is one. So movement seeking justice outside the caste structures. There are movements, very few movements, said as long as you are in caste, there is no escape. Let me get out of caste. That is the second major stream. So you can divide these movements broadly in these two categories. You can also divide these in terms of who led the movements. Movements led by Dalits, movements led by non-Dalits. That could be another pragmatic classifications possible. Now, movement led by non-Dalits and those who believe change within the caste structures. For example, the Bhakti movements. The 12th century Bhakti movements opposed untouchability but endorsed Varnashrama. So how do you want to deal with this? So everybody says, no, the caste system is fine, there is no problem, but untouchability is a problem. So let us deal with untouchability. But caste is fine, Varnashrama is fine, let us go ahead with this. Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Pratana Samaj, almost all these organizations fall in this category. They all endorsed Varnashrama, to some extent caste, but they were all vehemently opposed untouchability. The new Vedantic movements, again 19th century movements represented by Vivekananda, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and the institution they introduced, like Brahma Samaj and Arya Samaj, also opposed untouchability. And by and large, the upper caste leadership did not question the systematic consignment of a huge independent sections of the populations to untouchability in the name of karma and dharma. So all these movements also argued that today you are in this particular condition because of your past bad deeds. Bad things that you did in the past, you are here as untouchable. And the bad deeds you did in the past, you are here as women. Because both so-called untouchables and women are parallelly treated in the same way. Even Brahmin women, as I said. So the Shudras and the Brahmins, women and the so-called untouchables broadly put into one category and then treated with all inhuman manner. The disaster, in my opinion, took place Then Mahatma Gandhi also went on a same line of argument. Gandhi was vehemently opposed to untouchability. He went and stayed among the so-called Harijans, ate with them. All know who is a Bangi. There are different terms used in different states, but those people who are directly engaged in cleaning toilets, manual scavenging, those engaged in such occupations are generally in the northern India called Bangis. There are different names. Now, under one hand you can justify every occupation is good. No occupation is lesser in terms of status. Taking that position, he was idealizing the job done by the Bangis. He says, the ideal Bangi of my conception would be a Brahmana par excellence, possibly even excel him, meaning he is even better than a Brahmin. It is possible to envisage the existence of a Bangi without a Brahmana, but without the former, the latter cannot. It is the Bangi who enables society to live. When you idealize certain things, it's good, so people obviously will hold on to it. A Bangi does for society what a mother does for her baby. A mother washes her baby of the dirt and ensures his health. Even so, the Bangi protects and safeguards the health of an entire community by maintaining sanitation for it. The Brahmana's duty is to look after the sanitation of the soul, the Bangis that of the body of the society. But there is a difference in practice. The Brahmana generally does not live up to his duty, but the Bangi does willy-nilly, no doubt. Society is sustained by several services. The Bangi constitutes the foundation of all services. Meaning, yes, there is a duty assigned to a Brahmana, but he does not do it regularly, but the Bangi does. So, which is as important as any other task a human being can possibly engage in. What qualities should such an honored servant of a society exemplify in his person? In my opinion, an ideal Bangi should have a thorough knowledge of the principles of sanitation. Now, you have a modern technology, and that could be one of the reasons why we see a lot of dirt around even today. How it is being idealized. A Bangi should know how a right kind of latrine is constructed and how the correct way of cleaning it. He should know how to overcome and destroy the odor of excreta and the various disinfectants to render them innocuous. He should likewise know the process of converting night soil and urine into a manure. But that is not all. My ideal Bangi would know the quality of night soil and urine. He would keep a close watch on these and give a timely warning to the individuals concerned. You know what it means? You watch out. You examine and tell the person what to eat, what not to eat. Thus, he will give a timely notice of the results of his examinations of the excreta. So, he is expected to examine the excreta. That presupposes a scientific knowledge of the requirements of his profession. So, it is a profession. A Bangi would likewise be an authority on the subject of disposal of night soil in small villages as well as big cities. His advice and guidance in the matter would be sought for and freely given to society. His advice and service should be given to the society free of cost. With all these things should be given free of cost. It goes without saying that he would have the usual learning necessary for reaching the standard here laid down for his profession. Now, there are things of this kind. I don't want to go into these details. Meaning, when you want to raise the level of every individual, when you want to, hoping to expand human freedom, that is the modern day conception of what development is. What development today is individual's freedom. Freedom as development. That's what today's understanding of what development is all about. Amartya Sen talks about, Ambedkar has talked about, everyone has talked about freedom as an important constituent element of what development is all about. Here is Gandhiji saying that he is confined to dealing with dirt and night soil. To some extent, Swami Vivekananda also endorsed traditional callings. He was for it, although he was very critical about the Brahmanism as an ideology. Among the non-Dalits who also looked at the issues of the Dalits, the role of British also something we need to understand a bit. During the British Raj, Dalits were identified as a separate cultural entity. In fact, one of the arguments of Ambedkar was that the so-called untouchables or Dalits are a religious minority. It's a minority group. They are nothing to do with the Hindus, so they should be treated as a minority on par with the Hindu, Muslims and Christians. That was his proposal, which was opposed vehemently, and Gandhi was spearheading that movement, that they are very much part of the Hinduism and they should be within it. So, but the British found out that they are culturally different, unique in many respects. They grouped them as an independent category. There was a formal move by the leaders like Ambedkar that don't club them with the Hindus. This was. And seeing certain the characteristics, they also record, yes, there is some point in what he's saying. For example, there are people who revere cow and there are people who eat cows. How can these two be of a same religion? There are who are vegetarians, there are non-vegetarians. There are people who worship certain gods and goddesses, and that worship is not allowed to the other people. How can these be together? There are people who are allowed inside the village, there are people are not allowed inside the village, they are forced to stay outside the village. How can these be a person belonging to the same religions? In fact, Ambedkar once argued, if your religion is my religion, your rights should be my rights. When that is not so, definitely I don't belong to your religion. This was a clear-cut verdict, confrontation between Ambedkar and Gandhi. So, British made a point to it. This determination was based on Hinduism's dehumanization of entire non-caste Hindu communities. Listed untouchables, this mechanical separation necessarily portrayed Dalits' struggle for recognitions, the gross violation of their human rights and their socio-economic needs. However, the British Raj and the Christian missionaries did not attempt to disturb the caste hierarchy and its mandates in fear of caste Hindu reprisal. Knowing very well that yes, there are serious challenges, serious issues, British intervened in many other things. They did not intervene in this affair because they want to continue here. They want to continue here, and they know if they have to continue here, then they have to please the local lords. So they kept themselves away. But one interesting thing we have to mention here, the British army allowed Dalits to enter. So there was a space created for them, and out of their desperation to prove that we are not untouchables, we can all, given a chance, we can also be warriors and Kshatriyas, and as I said, they slashed down, killed thousands of people, 100 people managed to kill thousands of people, and they were given a chance by the British. The Maha regiment was very well known for it. Then you also have movements by Dalits. This is one set of people who endorsed caste but were fighting against untouchability. The tradition continued even after independence. What Congress and Gandhis have done to untouchables, there is a huge volume written by Ambedkar which says how Congress continued the same tradition of Harijan Sevak Sangh. The whole aim is to deal with untouchability, but caste remained intact. As I said, when you are caught in a situation, you will try to escape from various ways. When Dalits are caught with the indignity, inhumanity and all possible violence, they adopted various strategies. A few things have been documented, I just want to bring to your notice. For example, in 1820, there was one movement called Satnami movement in Madhya Pradesh. There was one Adi Dhan movement in Punjab in the early 19th century. There was one Adi Hindu movement in western UP. There was one Bengal Namashudra movement. In Kerala there was Guru Narayana Swami movement, 19th century. In Tamil Nadu there was Adi Dravida movement, Nadar movement in the 20s. Coastal Andhra there is Adi Andhra movement, Adi Hindus movement, Ambedkarite movement, Dalit solidarity movement, revival of Buddhism, Dalit assertion for citizenship rights through political power, those kinds. And these are very old movements. For example, in Tamil Nadu there is a community called Chanan. Traditionally they are the toddy tappers. They used to climb palm trees and extract what is known as toddy, local daru. This was the traditional job. And what is the status? I mean, I really don't understand somebody who extracting the toddy, how can they become untouchable? So you can say that yes, somebody dealing with the night soil, so there is a possibility of becoming untouchable. Somebody extracting daru from palm trees, how can they become untouchables? So the image of this community for a long time was unseeable, not even untouchable, they are called unseeable. There are saying in Tamil, they are unseeable. What they did, they changed their title as Nadar. Nadar means ruler. So Chanan became Nadar. And they exported, in the early 90s, they exported, when during British regime, they export lot of these jaggeries, gold made out of this toddy. They became very rich. In fact, the first Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu was from this community, and they are well off now. Probably the only so-called scheduled caste who crossed the pollution line, you can say, the Nadars. Nobody calls them as a scheduled caste. They are a very powerful group. What they did, they changed the title, they claimed a position of higher caste status, they gave up such occupations, obviously the economic status increased, they formed associations wherever they went, and also started imitating the lifestyles of so-called upper caste, and they are no more an untouchable caste today. There is one Satnami movement or Ilava movement. This Ilava movement is from Kerala. They are called Iravas or Ilavas. They were not allowed inside the temples, so that Guru Narayana Swami spearheaded that movement. They started their own, they appoint themselves as a priest, managed to escape. Again another powerful traditional called scheduled castes are today well known. Caste groups do not suffer pollution as much as they did in the past. There are Adi Dharma movement different from the Adi Dharma movement, which basically from Punjab. They claim that we originated even prior to Hinduism. We were different. We are not Hindus. We are prior to Hindus. Our traditions are much superior, and they kept claiming that was one. But still, Adi Dharmis still are scheduled caste. The Ambedkar conversion to Buddhism. Pulayas of Kerala again converted to Christianity. Some of the Pallars from Tamil Nadu converted to Islam. So conversion was adopted as a strategy. So when you are caught, you follow different strategy to escape. So one of the strategy is to convert. So those who converted into other religions are those who taken a different position. That as long as within the caste there is no escape, so you move out of the caste. Ambedkar took that position. Some of these people who moved into Christianity took that positions. Some consciously moved into Islam. A very interesting case in Tamil Nadu, especially the southern Tamil Nadu. Some of them moved into, there were incentives, mobilizations to move into Christianity, but these people moved into Islam. Deliberately they moved into Islam. The reason being, the people who confront Hindus or Muslims, let me go there, number one. Number two, definitely there was also an incentive that once you come, you will be sent to Dubai. Number three, the Muslim community, with all said and done, it's a much more close community, meaning that the acceptance level seems to be much higher compared to other faith. You have today, there are different churches, or if the same church, separate prayers held according to caste groups. Separate burial grounds are there for Christians. I remember a case, I even went part of that. A body was buried within the church, then there was the opposition to it, that he is a lower caste bishop, so he should not be allowed to bury here. His body was thrown out. So, just by changing jacket, you don't become Christian. You don't become Muslim. Because your software is basically caste-ridden software. You know, Ubuntu software will not accept anything. It will blink and faint and collapse. It will wait. But Windows, anything you can put, it accept. There is a provision. It is, caste software is like that. Anything, come on, no problem. But I will be there. Nobody can replace. That is the problem. So Christianity does not have a caste, but Indian Christians have caste. Right? Islam does not have caste, but Indian Muslims do have caste. So you can't tell, it is there also. As long as you are there, it will be there. You go to Europe, you will find this. That is why this is, we export this disease globally. I think we should, patronize it. And it's a very good software. There is no antivirus possible. It will thrive, will live, expand wherever you take it. Even you take it to the moon, it will go. It will survive. That is I think that is the software we have developed. Because we always say we had Vedas, we have also had this. Probably that is why it is much acclaimed software. It does not die easily. So, when you say caste movements, you know this, there is one Satnami movement. Out of desperation, you will do many things. One day one person came, in the Satnami movement, I think it was in Madhya Pradesh. One day he came and declared, I am the Baba. I have a new religion. What is a Satnam? Truth. That is the only religion. So you refrain from eating non-vegetarian, don't steal this and that, I am the God, you follow me. Like that. You will find many Babas now. India is full of Babas. So you had Babas of those kind. Also to escape caste there are Babas. In one videos I was listening that there was one Baba who comes in the midnight, deals with a lot of issues. The psychiatrist says this fellow has a sexual problem. That he cannot satisfy his wife. In order to escape, he is doing this drama. I saw it in a video tip. It is there available. So when you have many interpretations, we do not, I don't want to say that is correct or wrong, but there are of those interpretations possible. Those possibilities are there. So in order to escape something, you may resort to many unimaginable things. Like we don't want to come to class, naturally you may fall sick. Many times you may fall sick. So you may end up doing. So, and then some of these movements are, for example, Professor T.K. Oman says they are basically protest movements. But protest in various forms. कोई लोग डंडा लेके प्रोटेस्ट करते हैं, कुछ लोग साइलेंटली प्रोटेस्ट करते हैं. So protest does not mean a morcha or literally a gunshot, but there can be silent protest. In the 30s, there was a protest in Tamil Nadu. It was part of my PhD. I am aware of that. The women protested against the Brahmin men. How they used to protest? It was a ritual. A traditional Pandit has to get up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, draw water from the well, take bath, freshen up, put vibhuti all around, and then go out of your house. But at that time, it is a practice that no Shirulka should come before them. If they happen to come, they believe that their day will not be good. So the women around that area knew very well. So as soon as this Pandit comes out, the women used to come out, Pranam, Namaste ji. He'll go in front of him and say Namaste ji. Then he can't say anything. He has to go back and again take bath. come back after an hour, again Pranamji. So they used to, this was narratives, it has come. The whole day is made hell for him. So simple women, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do morcha. Simple say namaste can be protest. Simple namaste can be protest. So there are silent form of very, very covered forms of protest of such kinds. There were also caste protest. There were villages where women are not allowed to cover their breast. Women in their young days are not allowed to cover their breast. In my own village, I remember many women are not wearing blouse, only they cover their breast with a sari. And as part of my research, I was inquiring why many women are wearing only sari, and they are rich enough to cover their breast. Abhi kya karne ka? Abhi old age ho gaya, abhi kya karne ka? The women were saying, abhi old age, when you are not allowed to wear blouse, what happened during young days? What happened during young days? They said, you are not allowed to wear blouse. Why? So it was a practice. This is, I will not say the Brahmin forced them to do it. It is a backward caste practice. That is why I said caste is not a Brahmin versus Dalit. The entire system, everybody is abnormal. The entire caste system, nobody can be normal. You know, somebody thinks that by showing hand he gets something. That is an abnormal behavior. By showing hand, if he thinks that he is giving something to people, that is an abnormal behavior. Then the person who accepts, I got something, that is also an abnormal behavior. And somebody afraid of facing somebody is also an abnormal behavior. Seeing a person, future will be ruined, it's also an abnormal behavior. And I tell you, any abnormality, think of it is there in the caste, in the attitude. So what these people, the young women were not allowed to cover their breast. At that time, for water, they used to carry a pot. From long distance, you have to carry water. And in that process, your whole body gets drenched. Obviously, your breast is exposed. And you are not allowed to cover their breast in any manner. And the practice, if you don't, if you are trying to cover it, they used to throw stone. Those days only mud pots. They used to throw stone at the pots and water will fall and whole body is drenched and again breast is exposed. If a woman was so unwise, still tried to cover up, she was beaten up. In so many ways, so many states, so many kind of practice were there to hold on to caste. And this is, I am saying caste is a virus, it's a disease because it is not some group of one individual is doing against, it's not Brahmin against a non-Brahmin. Everybody is doing this. Here in Maharashtra itself, Mahar thinks he is superior than Matang. All are scheduled caste, but there are upper caste, lower caste. See, there are upper caste among lower caste. Say Dalits of the Dalits, and there are different terms coming. Why? Because hierarchy is so nice. Everybody wants to be above somebody. And everybody wants somebody, so many people below. Nobody should be above me, but everybody should be below me. That is an instinct almost every being has, and caste system, that is why Gandhi says it is a scientific institution. Probably. So, caste movement has been taking different shapes. During British time, these are traditional forms, some of them try to hide, some of them try to escape, run away from the village. From the village you come to city and you change your name, you survive here. Some people converted to other religions, claim yourself to be in Islam one good thing, in Buddhism you are not expected to put any extra dress, no extra fitting, but in Islam there is extra fitting required. You have to put a cap or something that clearly gives an image, you are a Muslim. Once you know your project, you are a Muslim, people don't bother much. But if you don't put topi, definitely they will ask you, what is your name? What is your surname? They will go on till he finds your caste, he will continue. Otherwise, he will be restless. So Islam gives those options. So it's made, once you are recognized, you are a Muslim, matter ends right there. Among Christians, there is no possibility. Christian, again, you have these names, Bishop Kamble, Reverend Kamble, those kind of names you will find. Kamble, how Reverend Kamble? Kamble is never revered, but he adopts a title Reverend Kamble, Bishop Kamble, here in Maharashtra. And then Reverend Kamble keeps Ambedkar one side and Jesus on another side. I said, whom are you worshipping? No, he is an ideological icon, he is a spiritual icon. He will create confusion between Ambedkar and Jesus. So when you are caught, you don't know how to handle it. I mean, that is what the confusion is. Caste creates confusion in all of us. A Dalit from Kerala will be better accepted in Maharashtra, but that Dalit will not be accepted in Kerala. If he moves away from that village, if he is somebody from Kerala, no problem. But within his own state, he is treated badly. But when he moves out of the state, he has a better chance of gaining more respect. So those possibilities people try out. Then, now what government has done? This is one. Now, as an independent nation, realizing that certain communities systematically have been marginalized, excluded, and so they need to be protected through constitutional provisions. You have special laws, Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955, SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, and the rules came in 1995. This is to protect them physically. And then you have a reservation for education, you have reservation for employment, there are special economic assistance for rural scheduled caste. There are a number of schemes. You have SC/ST Commission at the center, you have state level SC/ST Commission, you have Human Rights Commission, national level and state level, who also supposed to take care of such issues. You name it, you have provisions. Everything is there. But when it comes to this, M.N. Srinivas, Professor Panini and a few scholars have argued that atrocities is growing up. And in fact, last time I showed some data, atrocities on Dalits is growing up, rape and murder are on the increase. Why this is happening? Because state intervention. So, state intervention itself creates new challenges, that when people from this background get educated, go into high positions. I have a video, probably in the next class we will show 1 hour video called India Untouched, that gives a lot of evidence for you to what's happening around on this caste question. So, there are NGO movements, there are subcaste movements, and these movements do not come together. In Maharashtra itself, it is many times the Buddhist movements, Mahar movements, Matang movements, Chamar movements, Ruki Samaj, there are among people who engaged in manual scavenging, there are subcaste and they don't come together. There are issues. Now that is why you have now, you may be knowing, what is that, in Bihar they introduced Mahadalit, Dalit and Mahadalit. Means people who are more deprived. So there are categorization of categories, and that has also emerged. There are many people that is also divide them. So movements have been there historically, but these movements have not become a national movement, a pan-Indian movement. That has not been possible because of some people, because of number one, you know, you have about 160 or 66 million populations roughly in India. You have a scheduled caste populations, but they are spread all over India, and they are spread into few families in each village. You don't find a village completely of Dalits. There may be few villages, but you will find most of Dalits are spread almost in every village into 2-3 families, because they are divided. And then you have a division among them on subcaste, you have division among them on regional line, or Tamil Dalits and Maharashtrian Dalits, or Maharashtrian Dalits and Punjabi Dalits, they are divided. Linguistic line, there are divisions among them. Again among them within, there are religious divisions. Is a Hindu Dalit, Muslim Dalits, Christian Dalits, again they are divided. You name it, you have these divisions. And then on top of it, academicians also divide. On top of it, we also divide. You are a Marxist Dalits or Ambedkar Dalits. That is our contribution. So we also contribute for the divisions. On campus, where any campus you go, you will clearly see left-leaning Dalits, Ambedkarian Dalits. They have different movements, so they don't come together. There are multiple factors operating and not allowing them to come together as one caste movements, which is not possible. Now, I also have to tell here why these left movements and Ambedkar movements do not come together. You will find lot of debate on campus. here. If you are first year students, as you move on, you will get to know a lot of discussion on this. Why these two do not come together? What was Ambedkar's take on these left movements? You all must be knowing, Marx talked about proletariat and bourgeois, meaning the rich and the poor. So he said, workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your change. So the world is divided of rich and poor, nothing else. That is a very broad meta conception of reality. And then same is applied here in India. So we also have left movements here trying to bring people on class lines, meaning mobilizing poor together. And Ambedkar comes to picture, makes an argument. Bourgeois and proletariat is fine. But in India, we do not have bourgeois and proletariat. He says Hindu bourgeois and Hindu proletariat. Note this point. Ambedkar make an addition here. He says Hindu bourgeois and Hindu proletariat. These Hindu bourgeois and Hindu proletariat are qualitatively different from bourgeois and proletariat with Marx conceived. To Marx, all proletariat will come together, all poor will come together. To Ambedkar, all poor will not come together, because he says the Hindu bourgeois and Hindu proletariat, the Hindu proletariat will not come together. When he says Hindu proletariat, what means? It's Brahmin poor, it's not poor. It's a Brahmin poor, Kshatriya poor, Vaishya poor, backward caste poor, Dalit poor, Mahar poor, Matang poor and Bangi poor. These poor categories are multiple categories. It's not one group as poor. There are multiple groups of poor, and that is divided on caste lines. So whatever strategy you may adopt, these poors will not come together. Do you think a poor Brahmin and poor Bangi will ever come together? There may be exception. Romance can bring together. Romance can make this happening. But otherwise, this may not happen. Right? A Brahmin poor and a Bangi poor will never come together. There will be hierarchy. A Brahmin bourgeois and a Bangi bourgeois will not come together. There are exceptions. We are not talking about exceptions. In general, the principle is they will not come together. When they cannot come together, the movement on class line becomes impossible. And that is exactly why he was saying that in India, Marxism has a bigger challenge to face. The day you throw out caste, this is possible. The day Hindu proletariat become proletariat, the day Hindu bourgeois become bourgeois, class struggle will begin. Till that time, this division will continue. And the left, it is a biggest challenge for the left movement in this country. And in my opinion, I don't think it is impossible. It is possible. You can make it possible. In this hall, 800 people nearly sitting here, you can make it possible. You can make it happen. If the day you become a bourgeois or proletariat. I want all of you to become bourgeois. I want all of you to become the richest people possible. I want every Indian to become richest. There is no denial about it. It is possible, but whether it is possible for you to throw away your caste, that is what the question before you. Can you throw away your caste? That is a challenge before you. I think since yesterday, last sessions, we have been having a lot of provocative discussion, and I know you will have a number of questions. I thought I will just stop it here. If you have any specific questions you can ask, I can respond to it, and then if need, I will take it forward. See, caste movements today, it has become global. It has become a global movement. You have a Ravidasi movement in London, you have a Ravidasi movement in New York. The Punjabis, very enterprising communities. Punjabis as a group, irrespective of what caste they belong, as such they are very enterprising. They are there. In London you have plenty of Punjabis, many. In New York I found huge number of Punjabis. But what is interesting, there also they have carried their caste. They carried their caste also in New York. New York there are caste fight. In London there is a caste fight. What a great contribution India to London. And they have been outside Parliament, they are fighting. Inside Parliament, a group of Indians, some lords, some Indian lords sitting there, arguing that the caste should not be included in the single equality bill. If it is included, anybody practicing untouchability, caste discrimination can be booked under their law. So there are lords sitting there, Indian lords sitting inside the parliament opposing inclusion of caste inside. And there are group of Punjabis outside the parliament fighting, please include. I also went there to see the whole nice things. I never had a chance to enter Panchayat office, I entered British Parliament. So that is a good options. You also have an interesting cases, a Punjabi Valmiki community, a Bangi community could become a mayor in Coventry city in UK. A Punjabi Valmiki is a Bangi community, I suppose. You could become a mayor in Coventry city. You know, Coventry is the city of Shakespeare. So you could become the mayor of a Shakespeare town, Coventry. But here you have Punjab, you can't win elections. You can't even contest elections. You have in Nagpur, a woman president was not allowed to host the national flag. In Tamil Nadu, there are a number of constituencies where Dalit cannot contest elections. It is a reserved constituency, but nobody contests. If he contests, wins, and he immediately resigns and goes away. You have even today, after 70 years of independence, you have a situation like this today. You have plenty of villages, people can't walk with a footwear, as I said earlier. You have plenty of tea stalls, you can't get a tea there. There is untouchability. Rampant. 84% of the villages in India, there is practice of untouchability. Recent data indicates. Where are we? What have we done? I think these are challenges before you. Caste movements have gone global. Issues have become global in nature. Caste is an important issue in UN agenda. They have been fighting on the very issue that caste discrimination should be included in the UN agenda, and they have been fighting, saying that caste is not race, so it should not be included. Again the fight. So it goes on. So it is a well-known issue. All over the world it is being discussed, and we have made our presence felt everywhere in the globe, thanks to all of our genius. And I will leave to you some question, please. I very sincerely appreciate that your involvement, engagement, discussion of this kind. I think this engagement and discussion should remain only on intellectual level. It should not take any other form, I suppose. Any question? Share the mic, please, there. Yeah.